drafted. The cursor blinked one sentence, deleted another, deleted again. 40 minutes trying to arrange a truth that had already been living inside me. In the end, the screen went blank, so did the chance. Funny, life doesn't always change because of what we do. Sometimes it changes because of what we postpone. I convinced myself there'd be another evening, a better moment, a version of tomorrow where courage would arrive on its own. It never did. Deleted line, typing and nothing. Just another conversation that never learned how to exist. It isn't the rejection I never received that follows me. It's the answer I never allowed to happen, because unsent words don't disappear. They build an invisible room inside your memory, and every now and then they turn the light on again. Yeah, years later I realized something people rarely regret. Being honest, they regret all the speeches they rehearsed only to perform for an empty room. The hardest goodbye wasn't hearing no, it was watching silence finish the conversation for me. Conversation with yesterday. If I could sit across from the version of me who kept hesitating, I wouldn't promise everything will work out. I'd simply say press send, because uncertainty only lasts a moment. Wondering can last an entire lifetime. If it isn't the rejection I never received that follows me, it's the answer I never allowed to happen, because unsent words don't disappear. They build an invisible room inside your memory, and every now and then they turn the light on again. If I ever find myself staring at another message I'm afraid to send, I'll choose honesty over comfort, because disappointment eventually heals. But unwritten stories have a strange way of echoing forever. Final status, last seen. The conversation didn't end when the phone went dark. It ended the moment fear learned how to sound exactly like silence. 30 seconds, 30 seconds can rewrite an entire lifetime. Scene one, I stood there watching the red lights fade into the distance. The station grew quiet as someone folded a newspaper. A worker switched off the information board. I honestly believed I lost the night. I had no idea, I just found the story I was meant to live. Delayed notice, not every closed door is a punishment. Some more invitations to look in another direction. Seemed two strangers, one missed train. You were finishing the final chapter of a novel. I kept pretending the timetable might somehow change. Then you looked up, no fireworks, no miracle, just one question, missed it too somehow. Waiting, stop feeling like failure. Had I arrived on time, I never would have arrived at you. Strange how detours sometimes understand our destination better than we do. Because life writes its finest chapters in the margins of broken plans and a mission. We spent years cursing what didn't happen, never realizing those empty spaces were quietly making room for something far greater. Seen 3 years later, I forgot the platform number, the exact time, even the reason for the delay. But I never forgot the conversation that only existed because neither of us had anywhere else to be. Some encounters arrive disguised as inconvenience. Only time reveals their true name. Now I'm no longer afraid of arriving late. I'm afraid of giving up too early, because you never know which impossible moment is waiting right after the plan that fell apart. Maybe the most important journey of your life isn't on the train you just missed. Maybe it's on the one still making its way toward you. Last departure, the station closed, but that night I didn't lose the last train. I lost a version of my life where we never met. Reservation confirmed. 7:30 p.m. Table for two. Funny, some reservations are made for restaurants. They're made for expectations. Act out the second chair. The waiter filled 2 glasses straight in 2 minutes. Smiled politely, then disappeared around me. Forks collided, birthdays were celebrated. Someone laughed so hard the whole room looked over. Meanwhile, the chair across never moved. It wasn't empty, it was occupied by every excuse. I kept making for someone who had already chosen not to come. Receipt time never sends an invoice, it simply collects what you're willing to keep waiting for. Act to the turning point, I almost left. Instead I ordered anyway. The first bite tasted strange, not because I was alone, because it was the first decision I made without asking whether someone else approved. Halfway through the meal I noticed something, the room hadn't changed. The music was still playing, the candles were still burning. The only thing that finally arrived was my self-respect. Some people never show up, not because they forgot, because they chose another story. And maybe that's the moment you stop waiting to be chosen. Finally choose yourself, not with anger, not with revenge, with peace. Letter never sent. I don't blame you anymore. You taught me something you never intended. Abandonment can become an invitation, not to harden, to return to the person I kept leaving behind. Every time I waited for someone else to decide my worth. For some people never show up, not because they forgot, because they chose another story. And maybe that's the moment you stop waiting to be chosen. People never show up. Some people, yeah. Some people came back. I didn't need him, just someone better. Took his place, me, clothes and bill. The most expensive dinner wasn't the one I paid for. It was every year I spent starving for someone else's attention. The apartment next door, frame 8, apartment 14B. He stepped inside, keys, coat, dinner for one. The radio filled the room, better than words, just another Tuesday. Frame B, apartment 14C. She closed the door, fed the cat, folded yesterday's laundry. Read the same page 3 times, just another Tuesday. Parallel lives, they woke beneath the same sunrise. Walked the same corridor, listened to the same storm, through the same wall. One celebrated, one grieved. Sometimes they both smile for different reasons. At exactly the same moment, neither would ever know. How many lives exist one wall away? How many victories go unheard? How many tears dry without witnesses? Maybe the world isn't empty. Maybe we're simply strangers, living remarkably similar stories. Frame 8, year 3, he bought a birthday cake. 1 candle, 1 wish, no guest. Frame B, year 3, she received a phone call. Good news, happy tears. Music filled the apartment. He smiled, thinking someone nearby must be celebrating. He smiled too without knowing why. Intercom, perhaps empathy begins the moment we remember that every closed door protects a story we'll probably never hear. How many lives exist one wall away? How many victories go unheard? How many tears dry without witnesses? Maybe the world isn't empty. Maybe we're simply strangers. Be gentle, baby. But baby, we're simply be gentle. You never know what chapter your neighbor is surviving. Sometimes the greatest connection isn't speaking, it's remembering that invisible lives are still real lives. 5 years later, a moving truck, an empty apartment, fresh paint, new tenants, the hallway. Forgot what happened there, life didn't last. Hallway, we crossed paths with thousands of strangers. Maybe the greatest tragedy isn't that we never met, it's never realizing how deeply our lives were already running side by side. It's amazing how quickly the mind turns an empty space into proof. One moment of silence, and suddenly the verdict is already written. No witnesses, no questions, no second side of the story. Fear never waits for facts, it always arrives with the ending already memorized. Switch silence doesn't speak, we lend our own voice to it. existence, then a goodbye you never wrote. Every passing minute created another version of reality, all of them equally convincing. All of them equally false. It wasn't what you never said that broke me. It was everything my own mind said instead. Anxiety is an incredible actor. It performs fiction with such confidence that truth starts feeling like the lie. The truth starts feeling like the lie. Yeah, when your reply finally arrived, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't profound, it was ordinary. And somehow that ordinary sentence collapsed every imaginary disaster I'd spent so much energy protecting myself from. That's when I learned that most endings are written twice, once by fear, once by reality. Only one is true break. Now I no longer fight silence, I fight my habit of translating it into something it never meant final. Next time uncertainty asks me to finish someone else's sentence, I'll refuse, I'll let truth arrive at its own pace. Because not every pause means rejection, not every delay means distance, and not every wound comes from another person. Sometimes the deepest scars are written by the stories we tell ourselves before life has spoken. The loudest argument I ever lived had only one voice, mine. We never signed the papers, but somehow we knew every room by heart. You wanted warm white walls, so the morning light would always feel like home. I kept talking about a couch big enough for the nights when life hit a little too hard. It wasn't just a house, it was the version of us I believe forever had an address. Funny how you can miss a place you never even seen. We almost had everything, the keys never found our hands, but I still hear the front door opening inside my mind. We almost built forever. It wasn't bricks that we lost, it was every laugh that never got the chance to echo through those halls. Some nights, the future we never lived hurts more than the past we actually did. Yeah, we planned a balcony filled with plants we both knew. We forget the water, picture frames hanging just a little crooked, because neither of us would ever bother fixing them. Even the coffee mugs are chosen, yours already said home. Mine is probably still sitting on a shelf somewhere, waiting for someone who stopped dreaming. Then life signed a different agreement, one where our names were no longer written together. People think hearts only break when someone leaves, but sometimes they break when tomorrow never gets the chance to exist. No moving boxes, no goodbye, no empty driveway, just silence living inside every room we never got to build. We almost had everything. Sunday mornings, a crowded dinner table, 1,000 ordinary moments that would've meant the addresses before we ever arrive. And somewhere there's still a house filled with our voices, our promises, our laughter, standing forever inside the only place time can never take away my memory. Some people grieve what they had. We learn how to grieve an entire lifetime that never began. If you're hearing this, it's because for a long time I was a better actor and I was a survivor. Nobody knew. I always arrived first, not because I hated being late, but because I needed a few quiet minutes to convince the mirror that I could wear the same smile one more day. In every picture I was front and center, in every conversation I made everyone laugh. Turns out people rarely question the happiest person in the room. Funny, isn't it? Everyone remembers how I made them feel. No one remembers how I felt. I never type, I need help. Instead I'd ask, what are you all doing tonight? Because what I really hope for is someone replying, forget tonight, how are you? Really? But life kept moving, so did I. Nobody knew. Not because the pain was small, but because it learned how to smile first. Nobody knew why they applauded the light I carried. Every midnight I was fighting fires that only existed inside my own mind. Some nights I leave the television on, not to watch it, just to stop the silence from speaking too loudly. Because silence, when you're barely holding on, ask questions that don't have easy answers. That's when I learned the noisy room can still be the loneliest place on earth. I never wanted to be the strong one. I just believed that if everyone counted on my smile, I wasn't allowed to show them what it cost me. So I kept performing until one day pretending became heavier than the pain itself. Nobody knew. Not because nobody cared, because I became an expert at hiding broken pieces behind perfect moments. And maybe that's the coolest part. I spent years asking everyone, are you okay? Secretly hoping someone would ask me back, and wait for the honest answer. If someone always seems okay, don't assume they are. Sometimes the brightest smile in the room isn't a sign that someone has found the light. It's proof they've been walking through the dark alone. I still have your last text. Nothing dramatic, just see you later. Funny how two ordinary words can echo for the rest of your life. Nobody Nobody tells you the last hug looks exactly like all the others. No soundtrack, no warning, no feeling. That history is quietly ending. You walked away, I looked down at my phone. Both of us believing tomorrow was already promised. Transition. No one ever tells us that time doesn't make promises. Weeks passed before I realized memory is painfully generous. It remembers the smallest details, the way you fixed your jacket sleeve, the smile you didn't know would become my favorite goodbye. Even though when it felt different, almost like it knew what I refused to believe. If I had known later would never come, I'd have let the whole world wait. Because no meeting, no deadline, no notification has ever been worth one less minute. For someone you love since that day, I answer the call, I stay a little longer. I say I love you without saving it for another time. Because love sometimes sounds like choosing not to leave just yet. Life never asked if I was ready, it simply kept moving. That's when I learned goodbyes don't always arrive wearing tears. Sometimes they're hidden inside ordinary moments. A wave, a smile, a casual see you later. We spend years planning tomorrow, as if tomorrow belongs to us. Maybe that's the illusion. Maybe all we've ever owned was this moment. Nothing more, nothing less, ending. Now I hug tighter, I listen longer. I stop rushing people I care about. Because the greatest wealth was never having more time. It was realizing the time already in our hands is enough to love completely finalized. Some people change your life when they arrive, others change it forever the day you realize their last see you later had quietly become goodbye. See you later. Yeah, talk later. The door clicked shut, traffic rolled by. Someone laughed across the street. The afternoon carried on without hesitation, completely unaware. It had just witnessed a forever. I used to believe goodbyes were obvious, that they arrive with tears, long embraces, or impossible words. They don't, most of them. Dressed like ordinary moments, they borrow familiar voices, they hide inside routines. That's why we never notice them. Imagine if life could whisper, stay a little longer, look carefully, put your phone away. This conversation will become priceless. But time never interrupts us. It simply keeps collecting the moments we fail to recognize. I don't miss that afternoon, I miss how you laughed before finishing your sentence. The way you tapped your keys against your hand while thinking. The habit of turning back once more before walking away. Tiny details that seemed invisible until they became everything. Since then I've stopped rushing the people I love. Some messages can't wait, some meetings can't move, some deadlines will still be there tomorrow. But the people standing in front of us don't come with expiration dates. We're allowed to refine a movement now. Every hug lasts a heartbeat longer. Every goodbye carries words I no longer postpone. Because love isn't only found in staying forever. Sometimes it's hidden inside the care we choose to give before walking away.
Closing if this day ends like every other.
I'll be grateful
if it doesn't.
I hope the people I love
already know what I never want
to leave unsaid. That's the only promise I still know how to keep. I noticed it while clearing storage on my phone. There wasn't a final picture, there was a season where we simply vanished. One summer ended, another began, and somehow our faces never crossed the screen again. We used to photograph the smallest things, a crooked street sign, half-finished coffee, rain collecting on the train window. None of it mattered, except it mattered to us. Because ordinary days only become precious after they've disappeared. Shift, no relationship ends the day people stop loving. Sometimes it begins the afternoon. No one says, wait, let me get a picture. Let me get a picture. Yeah. Dinner still happened, birthdays came and went. We still sat on the same side of the couch. From a distance everything looked untouched, but memories had quietly stopped making new copies, as if our hearts already knew what our mouths weren't ready to admit. Climax love rarely leaves with slammed doors. Sometimes it exists through tiny decisions. The selfie that never happened, the vacation nobody recorded, the smile left uncaptured, until one day the gallery looks less like a love story and more like evidence of how slowly two people became strangers. And then people ask when it ended. I never mentioned the day, I mentioned the afternoon we watched the sunset together, and neither of us reached for the camera. Looking back, that wasn't the last picture, it was the first goodbye. We never noticed. Kept every receipt, every forgotten morning, every promise that almost gave up before becoming real. No cameras followed, no headlines cared, only quiet consistency, leaving fingerprints across ordinary days. Success wasn't built inside extraordinary moments, it hid inside ordinary choices made repeatedly. One more draft, one more correction, one more lesson taken from yesterday's mistake. The world worships talent, yet histories always belong to those who refuse to negotiate with their commitment. Reflection people celebrate the visible chapter rarely. The invisible manuscript written beforehand. Growth doesn't ask for applause, only continuation. Act 2, progress arrived like the tide. Never dramatic, never loud, so slowly that anyone watching would swear nothing was changing. Meanwhile, character was learning to carry what ambition alone never could. Final movement, years later, they admire what discipline had quietly assembled. Awards appear, doors open, voices multiplied, and suddenly everyone agreed on the same explanation. You got lucky, they mistook the harvest for the season that created it. Closing luck may open the door, but it has never taught anyone how to become the person prepared to walk through it. The world noticed the arrival. Time remember every unseen step that made arrival possible.